So, looking at polynomial long division. So first, before you do that, kind of look up here. If you remember a lot of the stuff that we just got done going through, okay, you might have a binomial, and you might have a trinomial, and you've got to multiply those together. So that would be, I don't know, x squared. I don't know. It wouldn't be x squared. X cubed and whatever else it is. I don't know. Let's just say that. That's not what it is, but whatever. Okay? The main thing is I'm multiplying a degree of 1 by a degree of 2, and I'm getting a degree of 3. So now what we're going to look at today is dividing that, let's say by that x plus 2, and getting the other factor as our answer. Okay? And so we're going to use long division. So before we jump into all that, let's see how much we remember from just doing long division with numbers. Okay, so if I'm doing this, how many times will 6 go into 2? 0 times. I don't have to write anything there. How many times will it go into 27? 4. So the first thing I do is I divide. Okay? After that, what do I need to do? Multiply. 6 times 4 is 24. So the second thing I do is multiply. What is the third thing I need to do? Subtract. So 27 minus 24 is 3. And what is the last thing I need to do? I'll say the last thing. What's the next thing? Drop down. And then what do I do after that? Then I just repeat the first 4. Okay? Then I'm dividing this by 6, which is 6. 6 times 6 is 36. Then I subtract. Then I drop down. Then I divide, and so on. Okay, so it's the same 4 steps over and over and over again. Okay, and it's going to be the same idea with polynomial long division. It's just going to look a little bit different. Instead of dropping down a number, alright, you might be dropping down a term. Each term you would drop down one at a time, as opposed to a number one at a time. Alright, so let's go ahead and get into this, and let me walk through as carefully as I can. And whenever you see one of these long division problems compared to just a numerical one, it's probably going to look like I hate you, okay? But because they look miserable, but they're not near as hard as they look. So give me just a second here. 16 from that. Alright. So looking at this, whenever I start dividing, the only thing I'm going to divide by in this whole process is 2x. Alright, that very first term of your divisor. Alright, the first thing I'm going to divide by 2x is going to be the first term in there. So 8x cubed divided by 2x would give me what? So let's write it out real quick. What is 8 divided by 2? 4. What's x cubed divided by x? I think I heard a couple of you whispering it out there, but no, x cubed. X squared. You subtract the exponents. 3 minus 1 would be squared. Okay? So that's where they got that right there. Okay, so I divided. After we divided, what did we do? Multiplied. So I've got to take that 4x squared And I'm really distributing it to my divisor, to the 2x and to the 3. Alright, so 4x squared times 2x gives me 8x cubed. That number and this number will always be the same if you're doing it correctly. Alright, Zoe, put it away, please. After that, 4x squared times 3 is going to give me 12x squared. Right. 4x squared times 3 is going to give me that 12x squared. After that, I would subtract. Alright, so 0x squared, which I'll need to talk about that here in just a minute, but I would have 0x squared. This next step on this subtraction, this is where most of the mistakes happen. Because I have to subtract this whole polynomial, which means this negative changes the signs of whatever is in here. So that 8x cubed, that actually becomes minus 8x cubed, which will always cancel that. And then that also turns this into minus. So 0 minus 12x squared gives me negative 12x squared. Subtracted. After I subtract, now I drop down and I start all over. So now I'm dividing negative 12x squared by 2x. So what is negative 12 divided by 2? Positive or negative 6? Negative 6. X squared divided by x gives me what? X. So I would have negative 6x. I divided, so then I would multiply. Whenever I multiply those, that gives me that right there. Again, I'm subtracting, so since both of these are originally negative, I'm going to be adding. Again, those will always cancel. This turns into plus 18x, which gives me positive 6x. I just subtracted, so after that I drop down. And then I divide. 6x divided by 2x gives me 3. I distribute 3 to my divisor to get that. Then I subtract. I have nothing else to bring down after this negative 7, so negative 16 would be my remainder. One thing you're going to be asked a lot, we were asked that question on the next page, so we'll deal with it then. Okay, so that is the whole process, and it's once you do a few problems, it's not near as difficult as it sounds once you just get into the rhythm of doing it. All right.
Can't you do like the 4x? Like, can't you split it to where you can do the 2x set and then the 3 separately?
Something else real quick that we're going to talk about on the back as well, but whether it's in your dividend or your divisor, okay, and if you forgot, your dividend is always inside, your divisor is out here. If you look at the degrees of this right here, it goes from 3 and then it automatically goes from 1, the degrees of each term. Your degrees have to go in descending order. Okay, so if I start off with a degree of 3, my next term has to be a degree of 2. And so if there is not originally 1, you will use 0 as a placeholder. Okay, so on that one it didn't have a degree of 2, so they put in plus 0x squared. That's one of the big differences between using long division for polynomials versus just numerical problems. Alright, so let's get to a couple just rules that we need to write down on this next page. So on number 1 it says, in which ways are they the same? So on there you can put that these steps are similar and then write out those 5 steps. So the first thing we did was divide. After that you multiply. subtract, drop down. Then the last step is just to repeat the first four. Go ahead and put on here that for polynomial long division, which is what we're talking about today, you will use 0 as a placeholder for missing degrees. And again, that is in both the dividend and in the divisor. Degree. Kind of ran into that dude's head. On the next one it says, is 2x plus 3 a factor of the 8x cubed minus 12x minus 7? That's referring back to the problem that we just walked through. And how you determine that is, if you get a remainder, the divisor is not a factor of the dividend. If you do not get a remainder, so if this would have turned out to be 0, that would be a factor of that. So, on that problem, was 2x plus 3 a factor? No. Why not? Because it had a remainder. So because we got that remainder of 16, it is not a factor. Because a factor will divide into it evenly. Alright, so going down to number 2. Alright, it says, and I'm just going to kind of quickly talk about the point that I just need you to know from this question instead of actually going through it. So it says, consider that you're dividing 2x cubed, that polynomial, by the x squared polynomial. So on this, what you really need to know is if I'm dividing a degree of 3 by a degree of 2, my quotient is going to have a degree of what? A degree of 1. Alright, you're just subtracting those exponents. Alright, so Coop, if I divide a degree of 4 by a degree of 3, my quotient needs to have a degree of what? 1. Cameron, if I divide a degree of 6 by a degree of 2, my quotient needs to have a degree of what?
3.
6 by 2. So subtract them, don't divide them. 4. Okay. B is just kind of a ridiculous question. It just asked, does the degree of the polynomials affect the steps? No, it does not affect the steps. It's always going to be divide, multiply, subtract, drop down, repeat. It's not going to affect the steps of it all. Alright, so let's actually get into some examples here. My people in the back, if I'm writing too small, let me know. Because whenever you're writing this, you need to be very organized. So if you're not a very organized person in how you show your work, today starts that day. So you're just going to write it like a regular division problem. In looking at that, with what we already talked about, Carson, what is the only thing I'm going to divide by in this whole problem? What is the very first term of my divisor? Divisor. X squared. Okay, that's the only thing I'm going to divide by this whole time. So Tate, what is 2x cubed divided by x squared going to be?
It's going to be 2x. Yeah, it's just going to be 2x.
2x. Write it above that 17x like I did, and I'll explain why here in just a minute once we're done with this whole problem. So now after I've done that, I need to multiply. So that's going to involve distributing that 2x to each term out here. So 2x times x squared is going to give me 2x cubed. 2x times negative x is going to give me negative 2x squared. And then 2x times negative 6 is going to give me negative 12x. That is the multiplication part. After multiplying, I'll need to subtract. And remember, that subtraction, I'm subtracting the whole polynomial, so that is going to change the sign of everything in there. Now, you can either physically change the signs once you get used to the rhythm of these kind of problems. A lot of people can just look at it and know that they're going to do opposite the sign. So now I'll go through and I'll just do those easy addition subtraction problems. Those will cancel. 3x squared plus 2x squared is 5x squared. Negative 17x plus 12x is negative 5x. And then I drop down. This is a part, a lot of people are able to go through the 4 steps once, and then they kind of get lost at this point. Because now they don't really know what do I divide by x squared anymore. It's always going to be that first term. Okay, so now I'm going to divide 5x squared by x squared. Which, Trevor, what would that be?
27.
No.
13.
What is 5x squared divided by x squared?
5x squared times what?
Divided by x squared. What's 5 divided by 1, Trevor?
5.
Good job. What's x squared divided by x squared? What do those two things do?
Cancel out.
They cancel out. So 5x squared divided by x squared is?
5.
Attaboy. So now I've got plus 5. I just divided. So now I have to multiply just the 5 to all 3 of those. 5 times x squared is 5x squared. 5 times negative x is negative 5x. 5 times negative 6 is negative 30. And whenever I subtract, somebody already said over there, what's that whole thing going to do? Cancel out. So I've got 2x plus 5. And somebody else already said this over there. Does that mean that x squared minus x minus 6, is that a factor of that polynomial?
Yes.
Yes. Why?
Because there's no remainder.
Because there's no remainder. Alright. Alright, let's go to the next problem. go ahead and write this one out. Go ahead and set it up. Most problems, especially on the homework, they will already be set up for you. You don't have to rewrite it like this.
How do you know what goes outside of the box? Outside of the box?
If it's set up like this, whatever, that's always going to go inside the first one. So looking at this, even though this one looks very long and writing it originally it is long, but if I'm dividing a 4th degree polynomial by a 3rd degree polynomial, my quotient is going to be what? It's going to have a degree of 1. That means that this problem is going to be a lot shorter than it could be if this whole thing over here was just 2x plus 3. Okay? Because that means my quotient would have a 3rd degree, which means I would have to go through those 4 steps 4 times. Okay? So looking at this, Liam, what's the only thing I'm going to divide by on this whole problem? 2x cubed. And Matthew, what's the first thing I'm going to divide by 2x cubed?
6x.
Okay. So whenever I do that, Carly, what is 6x to the 4th divided by 2x cubed? 3x. And I forgot to mention the whole column thing, so I'll try to remember on this one. So now I've got to take that 3x and I've got to multiply it by all 4 terms out here. Again, that first one should match the term above it. Make sure you're getting those numbers underneath. And again, I'm just getting those from multiplying 3x by all of these right here. After that, I subtract, which again means all these signs are going to change. So the first 2 will cancel. Then after that, I have negative x cubed plus 9x cubed, which is going to give me 8x cubed. Negative 18 plus 6 is going to give me negative 12. 1 minus 9 is going to give me negative 8. And then I drop down. I do something wrong. So it was originally positive, but then this chain makes it negative, so I would have to subtract. Alright, so now, Jessica, what am I going to divide by 2x cubed on the next step?
The 8x.
8x cubed. Alright. And CJ, what is 8x cubed divided by 2x cubed?
4.
Plus 4. And then I multiply that to the divisor. So I've got 8x cubed.
Chris, this has a lot of stuff.
Thank you. Minus 12x squared. minus 8x plus 12. Whenever I subtract here, is everything going to cancel?
No.
No. What am I going to end up with?
2 remainders.
And so now, since this is the first problem we've had with a remainder, let's talk about how we're going to write that. This, your answer, you're going to have, obviously, 3x plus 4, but you're not just going to put, I don't know, R2. Alright, because your remainder is a positive number, you'll put plus, and then it will be 2 over your divisor. So the 2x cubed minus 3x squared. I'm just rewriting this right here. Alright, so looking at this, Carson,
Yes.
please turn around.
Come on, Carson.
Alright, so looking at this, I was going to point this out on the last problem, but forgot. Whenever you're writing this, again, you need to be very organized. All of the degrees should line up in columns. Okay, all of those had a degree of 4. All of those have a degree of 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, including my answer. Sometimes I'll get lazy and I won't put the answers in the right column, but it didn't change the answer necessarily. So, if you realize that you have a column that has different degrees, what that probably means is you should have had a placeholder in that problem that you did not put in there. About 99% of the time, that's what that means. Okay. So let's look at one that has a 0 in there already. Now, if you were given this problem, you would normally be given it would be given to you like this. And you would need to know that you need to put that 0x squared in there. Now, the problem on here has minus 0x squared. Change that to plus. Whenever you put a placeholder in there, don't put a negative. It just makes it more, yeah. There's no reason for it to be minus. So, on this, Dylan, what is the only thing I'm going to divide by here? X. So, Dylan Taylor, what is 4x cubed divided by x? It's 4. But what is x cubed divided by x? So what's 3 minus 1? 2. So 4x squared. After that, I'm going to multiply. So I've got 4x squared times x, which is 4x cubed. I subtract. And that gives me 0. After that, I drop down. And let's talk about this real quick. So I've got 0x squared divided by x. What is x, or what is 0 divided by 1? 0. What is x squared divided by x? X. So you will put 0x plus 0x with your answer. You would multiply that. That would give you 0x squared. Drop down 7x. And then 7x divided by x would give you 7. Multiply, subtract. You won't have a remainder on this one. Now, whenever you write your answer, you do not have to put the 0x in there. It's not wrong if you do, but you don't have to write 0x as part of your answer. Okay. So, I want you to go to B, and I want you to attempt B. I'm going to be a couple minutes behind you, a minute or two behind you, working through it as well up here. If you get stuck or you think you're on the wrong track, then let me know.
Wait, aren't you supposed to change the that to a...
Coach, I got it too. I think being
Yeah, because you just split the same percentage.
If you know you've got this one done, if you've kind of kept track with me right here, go ahead and go to the next one. Now on the next one, be careful. What do we have to do on the next one that we haven't had to do on one yet? You've got to use a placeholder. You don't have a term with a degree of 3. So you have to put a plus 0x cubed in there.
see what? Yeah.
And on this one, make sure you're writing your answer correctly with that, with the remainder. Make sure you have this next one set up correctly. I'm writing it down right here. Again, you should have a 0x cubed in there because you need a placeholder.
Coach, wouldn't you put the 2x cube over the 0x cube?
You can, yeah. Sometimes I forget to line up my answer. Doesn't change the answer, but. There's the first few rotations of steps on C. If you're done with C, go ahead and do D. D will be the last one we'll do. you've worked through all of C already, and if you got a remainder of 30, then you did it correctly. There's the full answer. It's the remainder. There's the full answer on whatever letter that is, C. So here's the first few steps on the last one. I got a couple of you that are stuck on a few steps, so make sure that you're paying attention up here. See if you can catch where you went wrong. Make sure here you got negative 3x.